The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
We got a lot to talk about. We got some special guests on here on the Sooner or Later Sports Show. I am your host, Jay. Thank y'all for pulling up here on the YouTube channel. We're going to dive into some Oklahoma football. We're going to talk about a few other topics like possibly OU basketball and all kinds of developments in Norman. So I'm going to go ahead and just make this introduction short. We're going to bring in the special guest with us today. We've got George Stoia over from the Sooner Scoop side. What's going on, my man?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for pulling up. We really appreciate it. We're going to dive into it. And we got Coop as usual. Coop, tell the people what's up.
What's going on, guys? Good to see you here on a nice hump day Wednesday night. And yeah, George, appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on. I know that your time is valuable, so we'll only have you for the next 2.5 hours, and then we'll let you get back to your life.
Yeah, we're not going to hold you hostage for longer than 3 hours. So just, we'll make sure to do that.
Perfect.
But the chat's going to start getting busy in a bit, but let's talk ball, man. So first off, George, like I said, I appreciate you pulling up. You have been boots on the ground all up in this OU arena situation, man. Talk to me. What's going on with this? Does it look good for the passing? Are we going to get an entertainment district with the new arena? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of optimism that this is going to happen. And I know there's some skepticism out there that, last time with the University North projects in 2017, that didn't go through. And a large part of that was, obviously the city council voted it down by one vote. And some of that was, the taxes and how it was going to be funded. And, a lot of people in the city weren't behind it. This is totally different. 80% of this will be funded by private sectors. The money's coming from elsewhere. The other 20% is coming from public funds. The city and county won't have to pay a dime for this. It's still unclear exactly where they're getting this money. I think it'll be different corporations and things like that. I think OU will end up footing some of the bill, but this definitely feels like something that will actually happen. And I know last time, OU didn't really support the University North project until towards the end, really. This is a little bit different. They're supporting it from the beginning. Also, the city and county came to them this time, whereas OU kind of went to them. So it's a little bit reversed of what it was last time. So I think it's going to happen. I know there's still some people within the athletic department, within the university, that are a little skeptical. I mean, the city of Norman has just not been great in terms of getting things like this done in the past. But it does feel like there's a different vibe. It's going a lot quicker. I mean, we're going to get a vote from the city council sometime in the spring, maybe even early January, February, somewhere in there. And if that's the case and the momentum continues, then I do expect it will pass. Now, after that, you're talking about another 3 or 4 years before this thing actually gets built. So we'll see what the basketball program looks like, in 5 years from now. But right. I do think there's some optimism it's going to actually happen.
Well, that's the plus. And then, of course, getting ready for the SEC is probably the most important thing that we're doing here, because it doesn't feel like we're SEC ready.
Yeah, no. And the mayor talked about that today. Is some of this is the city realized a couple years ago when OU made this announcement that the athletics program is ready. OU feels like they're ready as a school, but is the city of Norman ready? And you hear things about, Campus Corner, what that might look like. I know that there's some people that were at this event today that are talking about totally revamping Campus Corner. What does that look like? And then providing more things like hotels and amenities and bars and restaurants. And that's what everybody looks at the arena, right? And rightfully so, when you talk about this new entertainment district, and that's going to be the crown jewel of this thing and why it actually works. But all the things around it, you're talking about new hotels, ones like the Noun Hotel that's been extremely successful over there on Campus Corner. So that's what this is about in the end is, hey, we're going to have a whole lot more people, an influx of people coming in these next few years. And the mayor even said, hey, we're not ready. We are not SEC ready right now as a city, but they think that this project will kind of put them in that same tier as some of those other SEC college towns.
That makes sense. Coop, go ahead. I know you had a question.
Yeah. So do you think that any chance that the tailgating lack of success this week, and if that were to continue, does that have any effect on this type of a vote? I mean, obviously, you're wanting to see what does the support look like if we go out and we did some campaigning for the past 2 years and change. Do you think that has any effect on how that vote comes out?
I don't think so. I think it's a separate issue. And that's really, and I've talked to a lot of people this week about the tailgating situation. It's a university problem. It's also somewhat a fan base problem, and we can dive into some of that if we want. I'm willing to call out some of the fans for that. But, I think this is more of a city thing saying, hey, we need to have the infrastructure to host the amount of people that are going to come in from in Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, whoever's coming to town, because those crowds, while TCU fans may not travel a whole lot, there's going to be a ton of Crimson Tide fans coming to Norman, next year. So I think that's more of a city thing in terms of the entertainment district, whereas the tailgating scene, I think there's a lot of issues both within the fan base as well as some of the policies that the university has, come up with. And again, we can dive into that if you guys want to.
Oh yeah, and you make a good point there. I think about like with Auburn, how good of a basketball team with Bruce Pearl being the head coach there, and those fans will travel in a midweek game. I don't know how they do it, but it feels like most of them don't have jobs, but they will do it. They will travel across the SEC landscape to go to these games and help fill these arenas and battle it out. So getting that new location, where is it looking to be at? Because I'm hearing that it's it's kind of a trek away from campus.
Yeah, it's over kind of northeast Norman, and it's one of those areas that I think it's pretty much the same area as the original project over there off of I-35 in Tecumseh, by the airport. And that's kind of the thought process is, the airport is kind of that location where people can fly in. It is about 10, 15 minutes from campus. I asked Joe Harris today, the OU president, what was that a concern in terms of, students going to the games? And he said no. They said that actually they think it's going to be a superior option because of the stuff around this new arena and the retail and bars and restaurants. He also thinks the traffic won't be an issue over there. So it sounds like they put in some research to this. We'll see. I mean, I tweeted it out today. Student attendance is great when they're good. I don't think it matters where they play. It's more about, can the basketball team win? Because if they're winning, I mean, I was a freshman when Buddy Hield and then went to the Final Four. That place was packed every single game. And so I think that's something that has to play in is, hey, they just need to be good and people will show up.
Or even with that, just having a player like a Trae Young caliber,
right,
that's just a world beater, that's fun to watch. If you have a fun to watch player, it attracts the fans. I've seen this. I went to Trae Young. I watched Buddy play, and I went and watched Trae play, and I'm just like, man, this place is packed for a game that you wouldn't think anybody would be here for. It was mainly because you had a fun player to watch that was going to get drafted high. So, yeah, we got to do one of the two things: win a whole bunch of games or bring in transcendent talent,
right,
which is kind of hard when you're doing recruiting.
Yeah, and I think that there's also something to be said that it being closer to Oklahoma City, some people that live in the 405 can make the easier trek, and maybe on a Monday or Tuesday night when they're playing a big game, more people are willing to come up there. Whereas you don't want to make the 40-minute drive up to the LNC.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, obviously, and then the closer it is, back up here to Tulsa, you're going to get some more buy-in that way too. Because again, it's just when you hit that flood exit, it just is sometimes just that stress and anxiety that you go through just right there enough is tough. So, as close to the city, I mean, that's going to be it. But yeah, it's going to need to get a Blake Griffin, a Trae, a Buddy Hield, and we're starting to see what's that called? Porter Moser hasn't had it on his team. Athleticism is coming to the team here. So maybe we start taking baby steps.
Yeah, no, and I think it's one of those things too that the size of the arena will matter. It being only 8,000 seats, whereas the LNC I think is around 12,000 or so right now. Will make it a better environment. I think people will be more willing to go. And like I said, if they build all these nice bars and restaurants, I think just more people will be willing to make an evening out of it. And they're going to use it for other events. They talked to Rayford Young, Trae Young's dad, was there today, and he talked a lot about bringing in AAU games, which could help with recruiting, things like that, and volleyball tournaments, wrestling tournaments, all of that stuff, I think will kind of help with that.
That's a good point. Okay, let's talk football. George, you've been to practices and everything, and this week we've got an actual matchup. I actually heard someone say this out loud. J.D. Piquel from On3 decided to say that he feels like SMU is an upset watch against Oklahoma. So based upon what you've seen in practice so far, does that make sense? Because me personally, it don't at all.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen SMU practice, but I think that Oklahoma has its eyes open on this. I know there's a lot of people out there that look at the schedule and see SMU, and a lot of people, myself included, have said all offseason, first real test is until Dallas, right, when they play Texas at the Cotton Bowl. I think SMU might be one of the better teams on their schedule. When you look at the talent that they've brought in the transfer portal, the quarterback they have in Preston Stone, a former 5-star guy, this is a group that can be dangerous. Now, I fully expect Oklahoma to win. If they play to the level that they're capable of, they should win this football game. But SMU is a dangerous team. I mean, this is a team that expects to win 10, 11 games this year and play for its conference championship. I mean, it was picked to finish second in the AAC behind Tulane. So this is a talented group. You look at the program itself, they're going to the ACC in a couple years. They feel like this is kind of one of those prove-it games that they do belong in the Power Five. So, and again, like I said, there's going to be names that you see make plays on Saturday. You're like, oh, I remember OU recruited that guy. Jordan Hudson, who obviously played at TCU last year, transferred in. Phenomenal wide receiver. He's a guy that can make a lot of plays downfield. LJ Johnson, their starting running back from Texas A&M. Jalen Knighton, their backup running back from Miami. You're talking about, Corey Roberson, who played at Oklahoma. He's going to start on the defensive line for him. So you've got a handful of guys that have played really high caliber football for Power 5 teams. So, would I say it's an upset alert? Maybe. But I do think, and you can even see the tone and the way Brent Venables approached the press conference this week versus the way he approached it last week. Much more serious, much more to the point, very quick in his answers. I think that this coaching staff and these players are taking SMU very seriously because, again, you look at these first 5 games, and they're not going to face a better offense in the first 5 games than what they're going to face on Saturday.
Exactly. Yeah, that's obviously with Stone at quarterback, it was just crazy. He's coming out and he's got some wide receivers that are going to be able to really test the defensive backfield. And what would you say that is the matchup to watch? Is it more the offensive line of Oklahoma the defensive line of Oklahoma versus the offensive line of SMU, or is it the wide receivers and tight ends against the backfield?
I think it's the SMU wide receivers versus this secondary. I do think, I know everybody out there is worried about the pass rush and getting after the quarterback, and that's going to play a huge role in Saturday. You want to get after Preston Stone, you want to contain him. Setting the edge is going to be crucial, especially in some of the RPO stuff that SMU is doing. But SMU has a lot of playmakers at receiver, and they're going to test those corners and safeties. And I know we all sit here and say, oh, well, they got so much better at safety and corner. And I believe that. I think they're more talented there. But for them to be tested this early is going to be tough. It's going to be there, and they're going to get beat. That's the truth. They're going to get beat at times on Saturday. It's how do they respond? Can they get enough stops? And I think they will. I mean, that's the thing is I think Oklahoma's going to score enough points to win this game. It's can the defense get off on some of those critical third downs, make sure that Preston Stone doesn't escape the pocket, those sorts of things. So I think it's more so can they slow down some of those receivers in the big passing game. They had some big explosive plays down the field last week against Louisiana Tech. I think they had a 67-yard touchdown pass in that game. So that's going to be key, and that's kind of what I'm watching is, can a Gentry Williams, who's only made one career start, have a big game. He looked great last week against Arkansas State. I think you know what you're going to get in Woody Washington. But what does that back end look like with Billy Bowman, Reggie Pearson? What does Justin Harrington look like? What are some of the formations? Does a Peyton Bowen get in on certain situations in the dime package and those sorts of things? So that's kind of what I'm watching. And I do expect the defensive line to do better this week. R. Mason Thomas being back, we've heard that he's been the best pass rusher in camp, him and Trace Ford. So to have R. Mason Thomas back this week, I think is going to help them a lot in that pass rush that everybody's a little bit concerned about.
Yeah. For those that are just joining us, we got George Stoia from the Sooners Scoop and On 3 Sports. We're talking about the game coming up this weekend. And so the one thing that jumped out to me matchup-wise, and you just mentioned it, R. Mason Thomas making his return. The defensive line versus our offensive line. I went and looked at their roster, and their offensive line is kind of small, except for that left tackle. So I guess the blind side to Stone is about 300 pounds, but everybody else is roughly in 280s. And so to me, I'm curious to what y'all think about this. Goes out to the panel and also to those in the comments. Do we anticipate seeing some max protect from SMU like we saw from Arkansas State, which will slow down our ability to get sacks? Or do we think that they're going to have to find do we think that they're going to find a way to get rid of the ball very fast without having to go fully into max protect? Because I think that they have to get rid of the ball due to the fact that our defensive line is a hell of a lot bigger than their offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I think that look, Rhett Lashley, the head coach, is one of the better play callers in college football right now. I mean, he's going to come up with some schematic things that is going to make it difficult, and I think it's also going to make it where it gives Preston Stone maybe some extra time to test those corners down the field. So I do think we're going to see some of that max protect. I mean, let's be honest, what we saw from Arkansas State, their quarterback did have some time, and there was some passes that were just dropped, plain and simple. And they had some open receivers. So I'm sure they saw that on film. They're going to test that again this week. So I think you're going to see some max protect. I think you're going to see them get the ball out quickly. They run an up-tempo offense. You're going to see them be much more fast-paced than what Arkansas State was. So I do think you're going to see some of that stuff. But I also think you're going to see Oklahoma do some things differently schematically on defense. They blitzed, quite a bit in that Arkansas State game, but they didn't do a ton of stunting. I think you're going to see some twists and things like that. Again, I think this coaching staff knows that they're going to have to bring their best to, win this game. And again, are they going to be throwing out, some crazy formations? I don't think so, but I do think that it'll be a little bit more open than what we saw last Saturday.
Coop, you thinking that's the direction you got to go? As Coach Marcus Dent here pulled up, he expected more max protect as well as them getting the ball out quickly because that size, that offensive line of theirs is so small. Like what are we going to? We should be able to run right through them.
What I expect also is you saw it with Gentry Williams on that one play, right at the end of the quarter last week. I think that with Bowman and Pearson and Gentry, I think these receivers, when they catch the ball, they're going to announce what happens when you catch the ball. You're going to pay a toll to catch the ball against this Oklahoma defense, in this iteration of 2023. And so if they get the ball out quick, it's going to be the gang tackling. And that's what, really what I enjoyed watching last week was, rallying to the football, people getting in chips. And, again, the Reggie Pearson shoulder to the quarterback on the sideline, or Gentry Williams just destroying that guy's livelihood. Those are things that we want to see. And again, this is a game that I think is, their offense is going to challenge us obviously more than last week. But where I don't think that SMU can really hold up is on the defensive side of the ball. And because you get past that, they've got a decently experienced first string defensive line, and I think I heard Gabe and Teddy, so I'm gonna steal this from them. But when you get the tempo going on, we're going to wear them out, throwing it side to side, getting them running, and as soon as they sub, they're not going to be allowed. They're going to have to call timeouts to get people back on the field because there's a significant drop off in that defensive line. George, what do you see out of the defensive unit for SMU?
Yeah, I mean, I think their starting unit's a decent group. Alex Kilgore, is a guy that's played a lot of football for them at linebacker. He can rush the passer. The guys up front, I think they have pretty much a whole new defensive line, kind of like Oklahoma from the portal. But like you said, we heard this term all offseason, but I'm not sure SMU has the competitive depth that Oklahoma does. And
George,
so
that's our drinking
drink. Yep.
word. You got to drink when you drop the competitive jet.
I got some water right here.
Sweet.
Uh,
Going in the game.
but yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a decent group, right? Up front for SMU, and again, I think this plays into the way the game will play out, which is I think SMU is going to be able to hang around for a quarter or two, and then Oklahoma should pull away in that second half, right? I mean, this is a group that they emphasize, finishing games, and that's what you want to see on Saturdays. I think SMU is talented enough to stick around, make some plays, keep them in the game. But at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think that they're going to be able to wear them down, and we're going to see how they handle the game management too. I know that that's been a big question mark this offseason is how is Brent and Jeff Levy going to handle the tempo in a close game or a game that, hey, you're up 14 on a team that can score a lot of points. Maybe the offense should go on an 8-minute drive to put the game away. I think that's going to be interesting to see play out. But yeah, I mean, I think that Oklahoma should be able to run the ball. I think they'll be able to find some things in the passing game. I mean, I thought Dylan Gabriel looked great last week. I expect them to hit some big plays in that as well. So we'll see. But I feel really confident about what Oklahoma's going to be able to do offensively. It's just what does this defense look like against that high-powered offense for SMU?
Good stuff. All right, we've got a guest here, so make sure y'all drop in the comments and give him some questions. We'd like to get George some questions before he jumps out. But I've got some. So I have a question here. In practice, I know that we were dealing with some injuries post game. You got Deshaun McCullough that was in a little bit of injuries. He came out the game after like 2 plays last game. You saw who else? I think Josiah Wagner didn't even get to play due to injury. Our Mason Thomas is coming back now that he's healthy. Drake Stoops was out. We saw Dobie come out of the game. How do we look as far as injuries go that you've seen or heard rumblings as far as practice goes?
Yeah, I expect Drake Stoops to play. He was out there at practice yesterday, no sling. He looked like he had gone through full practice. So I think Drake Stoops will be back. Deshaun McCullough was still in a boot yesterday at practice. So we'll see. That's usually not a great sign. It's on a Tuesday to still be in the boot. I think it's also a precautionary thing. You don't want to rush him back, especially with an ankle injury. You just don't want to tweak it again. They will have Gavin Sawchuk back, R. Mason Thomas. Davis Bevel's out for anyone who cares. But
I feel bad for him, man.
I do too. But he'll be out for, I think, another few weeks. But in terms of Josiah Wagner, I think he'll play. Makari Vickers is another freshman that we didn't see. I think both of them were very close to playing last week. They went through warmups. They were suited up. I think if it was a bigger opponent, you would have seen them. And those 2 guys are guys that have really stood out. So I wouldn't be shocked if they get in the rotation, especially Wagner. I mean, there's some people that thought he might start on last Saturday. So I think they'll be back. We'll see. We haven't really gotten a ton of injury updates, but the only one that I would say that I think is doubtful is McCullough.
Obviously, there's been a massive roster turnover. You spent some time covering my woeful Denver Broncos, and so obviously being around NFL bodies, who's somebody on maybe the offensive, defensive side, maybe one on each side that you're like that's an NFL guy, like based off everything that I saw, this guy and this guy, because I mean, we all love this. And we all love OU, and sometimes there's guys that we think are going to do a lot better than they end up going. So, give us a couple guys that really catch your attention when you're out there at practice.
Well, first off, you have to start with Tyler Guyton. He's the obvious answer. He's a guy that I think he could be a first-round draft pick. He is incredibly talented. His athletic ability and size is just stuff you don't see. I think he could go in the first round. I think that I've said this on the unofficial 40 on Sooner Scoop, that I think there's a chance the entire starting offensive line gets drafted other than McCabe Mattower. I think Andrew Rame could get drafted. I think he had his best game as a Sooner this last Saturday. Savion Bird's ceiling is incredibly high. I don't know if it's as high as Guyton's, but he's a guy that I could easily see get drafted. And then Walter Rouse, I didn't realize, I was not familiar with his game, as Shaq would say, but he is a guy that, is he a first round draft pick like Anton Harris said? No, but he is incredibly technically sound. he's actually bigger than Anton Harrison. I don't know what his wingspan is, but he's an inch taller and actually about 10 pounds heavier. So he's a big dude when you think about how big Anton Harrison is. So I think he's like a maybe a day 2, day 3 pick if he has a really good final season here at Oklahoma. So you're talking about 4 guys on the offensive line being NFL players. So they're all, I think, in there. I think at wide receiver, I think Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson have the body types to be NFL guys. Andrell Anthony as well. Andrell, he's got to have a really big year probably to get into that. Running back, I don't know. I mean, we can get into running back. I want to see more from that group. I think they're really deep there. I don't know if they have a superstar. Quarterback, Jackson Arnold's an NFL. He's got an NFL arm. It's just, can the mental part click? And I'm sure it will. It seems like he's an incredibly smart kid. It's just going to take time. Defensive side, DJ Terry is an NFL-sized guy on the defensive line. It's just so hard in the NFL to get a spot on the defensive line because there's so many talented players there at times. Yeah. But he could definitely be a body that I think floats around for a bit. PJ Atabare, I mean, I can't believe I named all those guys and didn't name him right off the top. I mean, he's somebody that you see him in person, you're like, that dude is different. Oklahoma's not had a guy. I don't even think the Broncos had a guy that looked that good. Maybe Bradley Chubb, who's now with the Dolphins. But Chubb couldn't stay healthy. But PJ is a guy that if he can put it all together, and I want to see more of him on Saturday, and I think we'll see him more as the season progresses. But he's definitely an NFL guy. Danny Stutzman's an NFL guy. Jaron Kanik. I interested to see what happens with Billy Bowman. I think he's a little undersized, but you've seen smaller guys make it back there at safety. Gentry Williams, NFL guy. His body type is perfect for the NFL in terms of corners. So they've got NFL talent. It's more so you got to put it on tape. The mental side has to be there. That's a huge part of it. Covering the NFL, I never realized how hard it is to really make a 53-man roster. I mean, for De'Laren Turner-Yell, he's a guy that just made the Broncos 53-man roster again this year. That's incredibly impressive for him to do that. And he's basically just a special teams player. So there's a lot of guys on this roster that could probably be core special teams guys for an NFL team. But those are some of the guys. I mean, Tyler Guyton is number 1 on the list, though. I mean, he's a first-round draft pick, in my opinion.
Same. I'm in the exact same thought process with that. I got a good question from Stephen G on here. Curious, what is the main thing you've seen from year 1 and year 2 in comparison for this roster?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't here last year covering the team, but I followed them closely. Being somebody that is from Oklahoma and just having covered the team previously, but I think it's just a comfortability with what they're doing, whether that's the culture or the system. The defensive players, I think, have all talked about it in terms of this is a complex scheme. What they were running under Alex Grinch was not that complicated. It was a very basic defense. And that's why they had success early on. I think under Grinch was, it was very simplistic what they were doing. That is not the case with Brent Venables. They are running they're running a lot of different coverages, a lot of different stunts and blitzes, doing a lot of different things up front, on the back end. So I think that's number 1 is players seem just more comfortable in what they're doing, the communication from the side. There wasn't a ton on Saturday where the defense wasn't lined up, right? Whereas if you go back and you watch that UTEP game, there was still a lot of confusion. And people forget that UTEP game was only 21-10, I believe, at halftime. That was a closer game than people realize. And then obviously the next week, Kent State, I think it was 10-0 at halftime. And
it was close.
I believe that Marvin Mims scored a touchdown with 18 seconds left in the half to make it 7-3.
That's what it was. Yeah, it was 7-3. Yeah.
So, they struggled early in the season, whereas and again, they're playing Arkansas State, and we'll see what it looks like this week. But those are some of the things that stick out. Tackling, I think I tweeted out earlier this week, they only had 3 missed tackles on Saturday. Last year against UTEP, they had 13. Against Kent State, they had 22 missed tackles. They averaged almost 14 missed tackles per game last year. So if they can keep pace around, under 5 missed tackles per game, that's a really good statistic. So they're more physical. They fundamentally look more sound. And then I think overall, they're just more talented. That's the bottom line. You can't tell me, and I hate to throw guys under the bus, but when you go from Justin Broyles and Jeffrey Johnson, on defense to either a Peyton Bowen, Reggie Pearson, and a DJ Terry, that's not a massive upgrade. And even Ethan Downs and Reggie Grimes to Rondell Bothroyd and Trace Ford. Those are upgrades, right? Or a David Agwebu to a Jaron Canick or Kip Lewis, who I haven't even mentioned yet. Kip Lewis, I think, is going to be a great player. So that's where they're more talented. I didn't even talk about the offense. I don't know if you want me to get into offense on that same question, but defensively, that's the biggest difference is they're more comfortable, they're more talented, and they just look more fundamentally sound in what they're doing.
Yeah, it seems like offensively going from year one to year two, and I'll definitely let you answer this one as well, but even just from me as a fan, the wide receiver room, our running back room is a little bit more stacked than it was last year. Even with Eric Gray, as great as he did, I feel like the running back room is even more stacked now. We could potentially have 2 1,000-yard rushers the way that things are established if we get them all to play. That's the one thing, though. That's the caveat, because it doesn't seem like we're actually playing our main runners much because we don't have to. It's one of those situations where we've got these games where truly up until Texas, do we really need to run Javante Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk? I mean, do we really have to? I'd say we probably would do it at SMU just to really put a test out there, but we don't really need to after that from Tulsa to Iowa State. And, well, I think Cincinnati may be more of a challenge the way that Emory Jones is playing. But besides that, looking at the wide receiver room, goodness, Andrell Anthony, Jaden Gibson is, thank God, he has finally arrived, something that we have been waiting for since he's been here, because that 6'5" frame now is being put to good use. And so offensively, what's that difference that you've noticed as far as from a fan's perspective looking into it and now someone that's actually covering the team?
Yeah, no, I think it's depth. You mentioned it. I mean, I think the wide receiver room, do they have a Marvin Mims in there? Probably not, right? I think Marvin was an underappreciated player. He's going to play a lot for the Broncos this year. But I think that they have more guys. I mean, you think back last year, it was Marvin Mims, Jalil Farouk, and Drake Stoops, and that was about it. Theo Weiss, you saw some. Braden Willis was a huge part of that, which, tight end room is definitely not as good as it was a year ago. But, I think that the wide receiver room, you just have more guys. And when you have more guys, you can stay more fresh. You can have guys go out and make better plays. I think that Jaden Gibson and Nick Anderson give them more size than what they had last year. You can throw some of those jump balls where you weren't able to do that a year ago. I think at running back, it's the same thing. They may not have an Eric Gray, who was a superstar last year for them, but I think they've got way more guys that they trust can run the ball if someone were to go down. I mean, I think Gavin Sawchuk is going to play a big role this week. I think we're going to see more of him. I think he can be kind of their home run running back. And then I would say, offensive line, I know they had 2 draft picks last year at the tackle spots, but I think they're better as a unit this year. I mentioned Tyler Guyton earlier. Walter Rouse is really solid. And then you think about the interior. Chris Murray was a nice player, but Savion Byrd is there. I think he's a big upgrade there. Andrew Rame is healthy. And when Andrew Rame is healthy, he's a really good football player. I was talking to somebody the other day about this, but think about how many plays last year that OU, the play just didn't get off to a good start because the snap was bad from Robert Conjol when Andrew Rame couldn't play. That threw off a lot of their pace and their tempo. And that doesn't happen with Rame in the game. And he's also just a better player. So, I just think that offensive line is much improved. I don't know how much depth they have there. I liked what I saw from some of the backups last week. But if they can stay healthy up front, I think they're really good. And then I'll say Dylan Gabriel. And I know everybody wants to see Jackson Arnold. And I think Jackson Arnold's going to be a superstar when he gets his chance. But Dylan Gabriel was much improved on Saturday. Now, we'll see what it looks like against better competition. But he was accurate. He was decisive. He looked very comfortable in the offense. I think that he's, personality-wise, he seems like he's much more comfortable talking to the media, understanding his role in the team. We've heard a lot about his leadership this offseason. I just think that he could have a really, really big year. And again, is he going to go win the Heisman Trophy? No. But do I think he's a top 15 quarterback in college football right now? I do. There's not too many guys in the Big 12 that you could convince me are better than Dylan Gabriel right now. We haven't seen Jalen Daniels play yet for Kansas. Obviously, the Big 12 Player of the Year. preseason Big 12 Player of the Year. I don't think he played for Kansas this last week. It was Jason Bean. So we'll see what he ends up looking like. Quinn Ewers, there's still a lot of question marks for him. He's got a lot of talent, but his decisiveness has not been great. He can't hit passes over 25 yards down the field for some reason. So despite all the talent they have, but Dylan Gabriel, you know what you're going to get typically on a down-to-down basis. So from the offense, they also just look like they're more efficient. They understand what they're doing, what Jeff Lebby's asking them to do. So again, I think it's just, do they have the superstars that they had last year? It doesn't seem like they do just yet. Those guys might appear, but I think they definitely have more talent.
George, so I'm going to bring up a name. By the way, if you guys have not, go watch some D.D. Westbrook film and then go watch Andrew Anthony from this week, because I got some D.D. Westbrook vibes from him, and he looks like it too. I mean, if Gabriel, gives 10 more yards on 2 of those pass interference calls, he strolls into the end zone, and maybe that first deep ball too. But we heard, just our typical offseason push towards Gavin Freeman. Did Gavin Freeman, with all the offseason hype, did he exceed or come short of your expectations for him?
Exceed, definitely. I'm working on actually a really big feature story on him. I'm hoping to finish it up tonight and maybe publish it tomorrow or Friday morning. But his story is just incredible. You think back to his recruitment, was really under-recruited, was going to go to Texas Tech. And obviously that ended up not working out. But I think that he's a guy that you heard Brent Venables talk about him at Big 12 Media Days or at local media day. And I think everybody kind of rolled their eyes like, okay, yeah, Gavin Freeman, he's the most talented guy you got. He is, man. He's electrifying. He's a guy that, I wouldn't say most talented maybe, but he's a guy that can make things happen, man. Like he's an electric player. He's lightning in a bottle, as they would say. I mean, you saw what he did. It's just something when he touches the ball, man. They can't tackle him. And his mom was a gymnast growing up. I don't know if people know that. His dad actually credits his mom with some of his flexibility and body control, his core strength. They say that he gets that from his mom, who can actually do a standing backflip, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, and so he's a kid that has great genes. And look, man, is he going to play on Sundays? I don't know. But is he a player that can contribute to this football team in a positive way? 100%.
Ooh, that's interesting. Mom is an athlete, and that's a standing backflip. Sheesh.
Yeah.
My knee hurts just thinking about that. So
I see Mike says Wes Welker vibes. I get a little bit somewhere between Wes Welker and Percy Harvin. He's just got more burst, more lightning, more suddenness than Wes Welker had. Wes Welker just knew how to set you up. And I mean, in his second year, I don't even think Gavin Freeman really fully knows how to play the spot yet. He's just, going out there with pure talent, and it just blows my mind when you watch some of that. I enjoyed the punt return where he had to cut it back. I think he ran longer on that 30-yard
second
return.
one.
Yeah. I think he ran it longer. Listen, I was in the stands when Antonio Perkins did that against UCLA, and it was crazy because every single one of us, every time he had it, we were just holding the number 3 for the third one, and we were looking for a fourth one. And we haven't seen a punt return like that since Perkins. Anywhere to where you're like, because even with Mims was good the past 2 years, but when he was back there, you're like, all right, let's see what, if something would happen, you'd be like, oh crap, well, I guess it's Marvin Mims. But like now there's expectations every time the punt goes up, and you got to think that SMU saw that too.
You got to remember too that Riley didn't let them recover, do punts either, or kicks. It was more of a always, do a fair catch, which annoyed the heck out of me. So many points were left because we gave up and abandoned the special teams.
Yeah, and Brent's kind of embraced that, right? He's all about everything matters, is what he says. So I fully anticipate them to let Gavin kind of do what he wants back there.
Pretty excited about that. So depth chart wise, do you see any changes going to be made in this depth chart? Because I made mention on a video I made when we prepared for the season that depth chart week 1 was not going to be like week 2. There's going to be some adjustments all the way. I say depth chart week 1 to depth chart week 4. It's probably going to be borderline a lot of changes in comparison because it's Arkansas State. So it's a great time to put in the younger players or players you want to test out and see what they can produce. As we're looking at the backfield, I think the wide receivers are set, backfield and secondary. You see any changes coming on both sides of those when it comes to this depth chart coming up for this SMU game?
I mean, I think we're going to see a lot more of Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk here soon. Maybe not this Saturday. I mean, I think it'll still be a pretty heavy rotation. I love me some Tawi Walker. Great story. And he looked great out there. I mean, I think he had the highest yards per carry on Saturday.
He did.
But the ceiling is just so much higher for some of these other guys that I find it hard to imagine that they're not going to eventually kind of take over that room. So, yeah, I mean, I think by the end of the year and even in the next few weeks, you're going to see more of Barnes and Sawchuk and even Marcus Major. And I'm interested to see, can Caleb Hicks or Dalen Smothers work their way up? I mean, I thought both of them looked really impressive in their debuts. So, that running back room, they feel so good about so many different guys that it's going to be fun to kind of watch which guy maybe emerges as that workhorse, or if they have kind of a 1-2 punch. Because I think that's kind of what they would maybe prefer. I think back to like 2018 when they had, Kennedy Brooks and Trey Sermon, and you'd bring in Trey Sermon to close out a game, right? I could see a Marcus Major maybe playing that role, or Javonte Barnes, and maybe you start a Sawchuk who could be your big play guy early in the game, something like that. So it's going to be fun to see how that plays out. But DeMarco Murray's done a phenomenal job kind of rebuilding that room. In terms of the secondary, I think Reggie Pearson's going to end up just being that guy at safety next to Billy Bowman. I mean, I like Key Lawrence, and I think that he's made some strides, but he just does things that Oklahoma hasn't really had at safety in a while. I mean, he comes up and stuffs the run, very physical guy, has played a ton of football. I mean, I don't think people realize he started as a freshman at Wisconsin as a safety, had some injury issues, goes to Texas Tech, starts there for a couple years. So he's played a ton of Power 5 football. Very smart kid, very physical, like I said. So I think he's going to end up winning that competition. And Billy Bowman's not getting off the field. I do think we're going to see more Peyton Bowen. I think he's going to kind of move up the depth chart. He's a guy that, again, we'll find new packages to put him in. I just don't know what they'll exactly look like.
I was anticipating that if we don't see much McCullough, we'll see Bowen instead. And that's probably going to be a good thing. No shade to McCullough, because I think he's probably our best cheetah. Well, he has the highest ceiling at the cheetah role, especially the way Harrington is playing. So I do anticipate seeing a lot more Bowen if McCullough is out. And like I said, that's going to be a really good, fun thing to see because that freshman is absurdly talented.
Yeah, and we saw on Saturday they had Harrington and McCullough in at the same time.
Yeah.
And I would assume you're going to see Harrington and Peyton Bowen in the game at the same time. If it's a 3rd and long and you can have Harrington maybe be a spy on Preston Stone, and then you can have Peyton Bowen out in extra coverage. We've seen what he can do with his ball skills. I find it hard to imagine that they don't find a way. I mean, Brent Venables is known for getting his best players on the field, his best playmakers. And so you're going to see that throughout the year where a Peyton Bowen's going to come in on certain situations to come in and maybe make a play.
That's a good point.
Muted myself there. always good when you do that. I got the little dog wants to go outside, so he's freaking out. Hey, is the Murdoch Tawi Walker hate for real, or is it a bit that he's just running with now?
He's just running with it. Murdoch, he's got his agendas. No, he's just, I think that, he's got a point. Some of it is, them trying to play into, the media, and they know what the depth chart is. They know that they put that out there to kind of stir the pot and do some different stuff. But no, he actually, the other day, it's funny, after practice, Tawi Walker spoke with the media, and I look over and who's over there getting a one-on-one for 5 to 10 minutes. Kerry Murdoch with Tawi Walker getting a one-on-one interview. So I kind of gave him a hard time about that.
I don't believe it.
Funny.
I don't believe it. He was splicing Cat 5 cable in the office. He was.
That is
he always is.
All right, so we got some rapid fires on this one. Who do you think is going to be the first? This is for you, Coop, as well as George. Who do you think is going to be the first person to get an interception?
Ooh, this season?
Mm-hmm.
Let's.
Because we have 0 so
I
far.
guess that's 0. I'll say Woody Washington. I think that he's had a lot in his career. It seems like quarterbacks keep testing him. He got tested on Saturday, so I'll say Woody Washington.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna say Peyton. I'm gonna say Peyton Bowen. He uh, he just keeps on getting. I mean, maybe this is stupid to say this. Maybe it's just me, but I think Peyton Bowen keeps on getting forgotten because we're so desperate for defensive line players that are going to be impact players. That he just seems like a guy that if the ball is going to pop up in the air, it's like he went to Back to the Future and read that little sports almanac, and he knows where it's going to drop. Like he just seems to find the ball, but I'll caveat it, but yeah, I mean, I would say, you're going to see deflection at some point. So I was going to say Kanek at the beginning because I want to see Kanek with the ball in his hand just taking off because I mean he just looks like a wildcat quarterback when he's running around out there. So either one. I see a couple Gentry Williams. What do you think, Jay?
And you mentioned Kanik. It's funny. I love listening to Teddy and Gabe talk about him because they talk about how he's just so fast and he just does all he does is run to the wrong spot at high speed. And it just makes me laugh because he's just that talented. He's a talented player that seems to be a ball hog, but at the same time still learning the linebacker position. So I'm curious to see if he's going to switch from Mike to Will and Stutzman takes over or Kobe McKenzie gets more run or whatnot. But if I'm going to pick an interception, I think it's going to be Justin Harrington. And I feel like it's going to be off of like a tip from the defensive line, and he's just going to be in the right spot and he's going to catch it. But if I had to pick someone in the secondary, I think it's Gentry Williams. So okay, sack. Who's going to get this? Who's going to get the most sacks in this game on this defensive line? Because we got one, and granted, it was all because of Max protect our game. Who's going to be our sack leader in this game?
Bothroyd. He was so close. I know everybody's been talking about the pass rush. He was close on 2 or 3 just last week. I mean, he almost had a strip sack on the one play. So I think I've said this previously, and I want to reiterate this. I think he's going to be the most impactful player they got in the transfer portal this season. He's a guy that can set the edge. He's played so much football. He can get after the quarterback. I think he is a really good player, and I think he ends up leading the team in sacks this season too.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see it be Trace Ford. I would like to really, because here's the thing: is they were rolling away from coverage the other day, and obviously with the max protect and the shotgun 3-step drops. I mean, you had to be 6 yards in the backfield before he could do the 3-step drop because I mean it was just extremely fast. But there's a lot of those other guys. My heart goes out a little bit to Reggie Grimes and some of the older guys. But I mean, I got to think that Trace Ford, just because this is game time, like he was out there, you got to think there's a little bit of him just going, make it through the game. Just make it through the game. And as soon as he starts, really keying in, I think that's when you'll see some explosiveness. But I mean, hell, let's have a meeting back at the quarterback. That's what if I am Chavis and Bates, I'm just saying, every single time that you guys have a meeting in the backfield at the quarterback, you guys get 5 minutes off practice. Let's make it happen.
Ooh,
but
okay.
It's better than earning a discount off on socks, right?
It's a fair point. I'm looking at Ethan. That's a good one. That is real good. I'm thinking Ethan Downs. I think he benefits from everybody else's pressure, and he takes advantage of it. And he gets this. I mean, he got the 1 sack last game, so I'm wondering if that leads to him doing that continuously throughout the season. That the linebackers blitz, or you have, like you said, Bothroyd chasing the quarterback, and then Ethan Downs comes out of nowhere and trips him up and gets the sack. I'm anticipating a lot of Ethan Downs in that one this game and this season, but I can totally see Bothroyd leading us in that. Okay. Top tackler at the linebacker position. I'm wondering who's gonna be the one that's gonna lead us the way at the linebacker spot.
Got to be Danny Stutzman, right? And he led the conference in tackles last year. I think he's going to have another big role this year. We'll see. I mean, playing that will position, maybe he, moves back to Mike. I know there's been some talk of that. He can kind of play both positions. If he goes to Mike and they bring in Kip Lewis, my new pick will be Kip Lewis. But if he stays at the will, I think it's going to be Danny.
Ooh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, Stutzman probably saw the box score and saw 4 tackles and felt like it was easier than a practice. There was so much out there. Like the fire drill just wasn't happening. Pre-snap fire drill. That you saw a lot last year. And so I fully expect for him just to make it in there, especially if the defensive line is collapsing on stuff. And, Brent Venables is probably still going to not unleash a majority of the playbook. I got to think that they know what they're going to be able to get after. But yeah, I mean, Stutzman, I just don't see it unless it's a decent blowout and we see, one of the backups in there for a decent amount of time. Because I'd like to see more of, Pachotti, Lewis Carter, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie. I'd like to see a lot more of those guys and get them some more time. Justin Harrington's not a bad choice either because, I mean, you saw him up around the line of scrimmage quite a bit.
I kind of want to see Lewis Carter go out there like a missile that he is and really level somebody. But if I got to pick one, I'm with George. I think it's Stutzman. I think he's looking at that number, like you just said, Coop, that I got 4 tackles and that's it. Nah, I got to up my game, and I can see him trying to go for double digits. Problem is that if things go the way that we anticipate, he's not going to play that much anyway. So last one, wide receiver. Who is going to be Dylan Gabriel's favorite wide out in this game?
Andrell Anthony. I think he's going to be his favorite. I think he's going to be his favorite receiver this season. I think he's going to end up leading the team in receiving yards. Dylan loves the deep ball. This offense loves the deep ball, and Andrell is their guy right now at that spot. So I'm rolling with Andrell. I think he's going to have a big year. I think like 700, 800 yards receiving, a handful of touchdowns. So I think he's the guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. Like I said, after watching a little bit of D.D. Westbrook film and then looking at him, it's there's a difference in playing a nobody and just getting out there and getting open. We didn't even see that from anybody last year. I want to think that maybe a little bit earlier in the game this week we see them trying to really get Jalil Farouk involved because he had the 1 catch and it looked really, really good. But I mean, he just barely off the fingertips for which could have been, I think, maybe the second touchdown or first touchdown at that point. But I mean, it was Dylan's first incompletion. But I think they want to get him going. The thing is with this receiver room, if you have Jaden Gibson do something similar to what he did, you have Anderson do something similar to what he did, you have G Freaky out there going crazy, you have Stoops out here doing what he does, Jalil gets a few. You don't have to really rely on any one person. And with the speed that you can go sideline to sideline, you got guys, even like Jaquez Petaway, he had 9 catches. I think that Jay, you and I during the game, we're talking a little bit. I think Andrell Anthony, he's different. And I think that he comes here and I think that he has a light switch that's turned on with him. And I think the sky's the limit for him. He has that D.D. Westbrook, and he's bigger and a little bit stronger. But he has that type of gallop to him that when he gets past the linebackers, like he sees green and he goes for it.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. And this team is there. It looks completely different than it did last year. That's the thing I'm the most excited about. And so, score prediction, George. What's the final score?
Man, this is tough. I will say 48 to 31. And again, I think that it's kind of high scoring early. And then I think OU kind of pulls away late. But I do think SMU can score enough points to hang around for a bit.
Interesting. Coop, you got confidence like that?
I see this team really just taking it to a new level. What did I say? 55 to 12 last week. And obviously I was wrong on both of those accounts. So I'm going to go 63-10.
Wow. That'd be a hell of a performance.
And you saw the AP, you saw ESPN put OU at number 4 in that one ranking, and I just really believe that this team is going to consistently push, and if you have Barnes and Sawchuk out there, throwing deep passes is one thing, but when they start loosening up, I mean, that's what Levy's trying to do. He's trying to loosen them up to where they don't know which way to go, and I think that the team speed this year is just at a different level.
Wow. Yeah, you really went all out on that one. My score, I'm going 42-7. I think we do give up a garbage time touchdown, but I think that this team defensively fights to keep a shutout going. I think that that's something that they want. I loved reading the article on the first and second stringers yelling at the third stringers, telling them, "Hey, keep this shutout, keep pushing that shutout, keep pushing." I just love hearing it. That's culture right there. That's a culture change. Something that we've talked about. We go all in detail about how the culture has changed here, but no, that is a true culture change to me. If you seeing players working, pushing each other to be great, and saying, "Hey, we got to keep this shutout because we want to keep these numbers looking good." And so I anticipate that happening this year. So. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this bad boy up, put a bow on it, let everybody get to their evenings. George, thank you so much for pulling up and joining the family. We appreciate it. Hopefully we can get you back on sometime mid-season because I know you're super swamped as you are doing the real reporting out there in the streets.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This was a blast. Yeah, anytime, just let me know.
We will.
George,
we will.
tell everybody where they can find you at and all of your counterparts.
Yeah, no, you can find my work at Soonerscoop.com. We're actually running a promo right now. You can sign up, get 50% off. Lots of great content over there, whether it's recruiting or reporting on the new basketball arena, all that good stuff. My Gavin Freeman feature, whenever that goes out, stuff like that. But you can also just find me on Twitter at George Stoia. I like to think I am full of good info, but also just a funny follow. I think Carrie's trying to get me to get my followers up. And so please go follow me so I can keep my job. But yeah, that's where you can find me. It's just my name, Stoia.
Yeah, he's killing it over there on the Twitter jokes. They're great. So you need to follow him for that. Also, he drops out some amazing nuggets every single game, and it's totally worth your time to at least follow him for the nuggets. I mean, if not for the jokes, follow him for the nuggets because there's gonna be a nugget in there. You're gonna be like, "Ooh, I did not realize that." So
that and complaining about the press box food.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is anti-press box food.
George, are you perma in charge of the Sooner Scoop Twitter during the games? I know Carrie's probably banned from it.
Yeah, no, that's all Carrie, man. He is
really
he is running the show on that. So I don't think I don't even have a login for that, and I don't think I'll ever be given a login for that. But yeah, no, that's all Carrie.
All right.
Well, we appreciate you pulling up. And everybody, thank y'all for pulling up to the channel. Please hit that like button if you're new to the channel. Subscribe. Go check out Sooner Scoop. Go check out George's work. He, like I said, fantastic writing. He always takes and drops some great articles and some great nuggets when he tweets. So help get his Twitter followers up too. We need to take care of my man there. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, rate, review, give us 5 stars. You don't think we deserve it, just give us 5 anyway and gift it. So with that, we'll chop it up with all of you, I don't know, in a couple of days. Peace.